What couldn't you believe you had to explain to another adult? Story 1. I was picking up Italian liras one time, 1999, pre-Euros, from a bank in Tennessee. The teller brought me the envelope. When I opened it to count the money, she looked at me with total surprise and asked, "Do other countries have different money?" A bank teller. Story 2. When I worked at a doctor's clinic, I had a lady on the phone wanting to book an appointment to have her flu shot. She specifically asked it to be a telephone appointment. I could not believe that I had to explain to her that we cannot inject her through the phone. Story 3. Volunteered in a charity shop. Lady came to the counter with a top and asked if I could look in the back for one of the same color but a larger size. Tried to explain we don't do that because we're a charity shop. She insisted that other shops, like H&M, have done that for her. Wouldn't take no for an answer. Eventually, I just went in the back for a few minutes, made a cup of tea for a coworker, and came out saying we don't have any. She got mad at that too. Story 4. That New Zealand, the country we were both born, raised, and living in, is not in Europe. Edit to answer most of your questions. Her reasoning is that when she fills out forms and has to tick a box for her ethnicity, she ticks New Zealand European. She thought that option was there because we are European and therefore in Europe. I had to explain to her that just means she is of European descent, that her ancestors lived in Europe. I also had to explain that not every New Zealander ticks that box, that there are other ethnicities here too. Story 5. When you save a file on Windows, the Save window actually lets you save the file into a particular folder. You don't have to go into your recent items to find it and then move it to where you want it to be saved. This person had been working an office job at a computer for more than 5 years at that point. Story 6. That her power was shut off because she didn't pay her electric bill for 3 straight months, and the letters on neon yellow paper from the power company were sent to warn her of this happening. She thought she was legally entitled to free electricity because it's a requirement for human survival. Edit to add, she wasn't in need. She worked a very well-paying job, and she enjoyed shopping for expensive things. This was not one of those situations where she needed assistance or mercy. She needed a foot lodged firmly in the backside, and the power company put on its boots. Story 7. That raw meat juices, especially that of chicken, should in no way come in contact with other foods. I learned this in 8th grade home EC, so I was 13 years old. I had to explain to a 40-year-old that no, you can't put grilled chicken back on an unwashed cutting board that still has raw chicken juices. Story 8. Used to work at a daycare. One day a little mouse entered the premises and caused an uproar until we caught and released it in the playground. After the whole ordeal, one of my colleagues, who was the dumbest person I've ever met, said, "Let's hope it didn't lay eggs anywhere." I was too stunned to speak and just stared at her, while my room leader friend said, in the most done with this shit way, "Mice don't lay eggs," and walked off. Edit. I love how so many people in these replies are trying to find a different interpretation of what she must have meant, or say that she must have been joking. But no, unfortunately, I have to tell you she was 100% of the opinion that mice lay eggs because she even doubled down about it later. Story 9. I had to explain to my 2 coworkers that it wasn't some magic fairy that was throwing away their coffee cups. They were joking around one day that their old coffee cups always disappeared by the next day, and I had to tell them it was me, and that I had to start doing it because they kept getting left in the way and being knocked over. I was off for a few days and came back and there were cups everywhere. Story 10, I talked about this before and will until the end of days because this man deserves to be shamed. A 23-year-old man who had the right to vote, who had a driving license, who had a job, and could get married and start a family, thought people were hanging the moon in the sky. Like the moon, Earth's natural satellite, was being hung on the sky like a painting on a wall? I'm still reeling over that one. This man had gone to school, had a formal education, and was actually going to college. He learned about that in primary school. And the kicker? I was the one to explain it to him because I was his girlfriend at the time. And let me tell you, things unraveled real fast when I started paying attention and saw through the smokescreen. Dude was willfully ignorant and bone-dead stupid on top of it. He was really, really good at hiding it. I dropped him like the mess he was and dived into more and more books to compensate the loss of brain matter I suffered from going out with him. Story 11. I had to explain to someone you can't buy like 2 pounds of lunch meat and eat it for a month. The concept of things spoiling was new to him. To be fair, we were both college students and he was living alone for the first time. I used to work at a coffee shop and had to explain what filling something halfway meant to a woman I was training. She didn't understand the concept of half. Story 12. A girl was staying with my family and had brought her dog. The dog got hurt at one point, freak accident, that required surgery on a back leg and the cone of shame to be worn. At one point, she started cutting off a bit of the cone. Me, careful, cut too much and he'll be able to reach his stitches. Her, that's all right, he'll be able to keep them clean. I had to explain to her, very slowly, that the purpose of the cone was to keep him from licking the stitches and pulling them out. She honestly thought the cone was just an aesthetic thing. Story 13. I had to explain to two teenage girls, 15 and 16, that the reason the candle went out was because they put the glass lid back on its jar. One of them said that fire can only be put out with water. I explained that fire needs oxygen, and putting the lid back on it cut the supply. When they didn't understand after explaining a few times, I had to explain it to them like toddlers. Fire is hungry, so it eats the air. When all the air is gone, it goes to sleep. Bye fire. The double O was too much. It was P.S. The look on their mama's face was so funny. She turned to me, threw her hands up, and said, "I failed," in the most defeated tone. That poor woman. Edit. I would like to point out that we did, in fact, have a serious talk to these girls about proper fire safety and when to not use water on an open fire. Story 14. I had to explain to a fully grown adult that yes, your car's keyless entry remote does indeed have a battery in it, just like a TV remote, and yes, the button stopped working because the battery is dead and you need to replace it. I also had to tell him that if you're going to buy huge bags of dry dog food and keep it in your garage, which you leave open most of the time, you might want to actually close the bag and maybe even put the closed bag in a container with a lid instead of letting it sit completely open, and then always wondering why the dog food is full of bugs, spoils fast, and attracts rats and raccoons. I wish I could say he was a super brilliant engineer or something, but yeah. No. Story 15. That I could not steal a button from her Viber app. I work at the printing shop, and old people often come and give me their phone to send stuff on email or Viber or WhatsApp and print them. So one day, an old lady, tilde 70 yo, comes with her husband to print some documents. So I turn on the Wi-Fi, connect it, and send the PDF document on Viber. I printed it and said bye. The next day, she comes to my shop, furious that I stole her direct photo send button on Viber. What happened? The app updated and the button is moved to another place. I explained it, but she couldn't believe me. She's convinced I stole the button and wants me to give it back. She was arguing with me for approximately half an hour until her husband asked her to drop it. She never came back. Story 16. Birthdays. I work in IT, and when we have new employees start, their default password is their birthday using the 2-digit month, day, and year format. I cannot tell you how many adults get confused about this. I often have to explain that January is 01, February is 02, etc. Just yesterday, I had a 40-something start counting on her fingers trying to figure out what October was before typing in the wrong password 3 times. I finally just had to do it for her. This was not an isolated incident. I'd say it happens with at least a third of new employees. All adults. Story 17. A local manager once invited themselves to a team-building event I was holding for a group near their location. Problem was that I had to explain to them why a 51st person could not come to the dinner at a place with a strict 50-seater capacity. The restaurant in question was the Witchery in Edinburgh, and it was quite in demand at the time, so the manager really wanted to go. They actually used the phrase, "Do you know who I am?" at me when I kept pushing about who had invited them, because we both knew that no one had invited them, and I kept playing dumb and pushing. I had to bite my tongue when they asked if I knew who they were. Any number of comedy replies went through my head, and I quickly had to barge past them all and pick something less unemployment-worthy. Story 18. There was an old woman who we shared an alley with when I was a kid, and she had several cats. She used to talk to them constantly, like in a normal conversational way. While this is very cute, I had questions. I said, "Why do you talk to your cats so much?" I was like 6 years old. And she said, "Cats understand every word we say, they just can't talk." I said that was not true. And she sat in her lawn chair, looked at one of them, and calmly said, "Butter, come sit with me." And I'll be damned if that cat didn't walk right over and sit on her lap. So I guess that was the day that the old woman across the alley had to explain to me that cats understand everything. They just can't talk. Story 19. One time at school, I'm a teacher. The electric went out completely. We were organizing for the kids to be picked up, and messages were being sent around by staff running here, there, and everywhere. One teacher asked me why they couldn't just send emails round. I said the electric was off. She said, "Yeah, we can get our emails on phones." I said, "Yeah, but the email servers are downstairs and the electric is off." She said, "Yeah, but our phones are working." I said, "But the servers aren't." She threw her hands up and walked off saying I didn't understand. Story 20. How a shower curtain works. I kept finding the bathroom floor absolutely soaked after my roommate showered. I gently asked her to make sure the shower curtain was fully closed. Keeps happening. Finally, I figure out she's been drawing it closed with the bottom fully outside the tub. Okay, sigh. So I draw her a diagram showing how if you put the bottom of the curtain inside the tub, then the water routes back into the tub rather than on the floor. She was like, Oh, you and your science. Then next time she comes out wrapped in a towel, which way does the curtain go again? We were both graduate students in science PhD programs. Story 21. I work in retail, had just rang up a customer for a pair of shoes. Total came to $97.19. He gave me a $100 bill. I gave him his change and receipt. His wife comes in later to return them. I give her the $97.19. She goes, no, my husband gave you a $100 bill. I want the 100 back. I said he did, but his total was only $97.19, so I gave him change back. She persists. She wants her $100 back. I said, ma'am, your husband only paid $97.19, so that is what you get back when you return the item. This fucking woman. He gave you $100. I want the $100 back. This wasn't some sort of quick change scam. This woman was just dumb as a box of rocks. I told her, if you'd like to give me the $2.81 in change I gave him, I'd be happy to give you a $100 bill. She kept arguing with me for a minute, long enough for other people in line to speak up and tell her how stupid she was. Mao eventually gave up and left with her $97.19. Story 22. A Coinstar machine. I was working at a grocery store at the time, and one was at the front of the store. Walking by, I saw a woman struggling and asked if she needed help. She said that she accidentally hit the Spanish instead of English button on the start screen. I started to walk her through the directions to use it. Feed your coins into the hopper, and it will count and sort them. And at the end, take your receipt to customer service and get your cash. She was very annoyed with me at this point and exclaimed, but I don't want Spanish money. Sigh. Story 23. My brother's GF a long time ago. I knew her for years when the conversation happened. She started talking about a problem at work. She didn't understand the numbers on the air conditioning unit. Apparently, she never saw a weather forecast in her life, at least never paid attention to any, and she couldn't associate a temperature number with how hot or cold it is. She was around 25 or older. Story 24. I worked at a pet store and had a young college student come in and ask to see the mice. We had a few fancy mice, bigger ears, different colors, so I showed them to her. She ultimately decided on a cream-colored little buddy and also picked out a cute little plastic ball for the guy to run around in. As I was getting prepped to scoop the mouse into a take-home box, I asked her if she had had mice as pets before or if this was her first. I had mice as pets growing up, and I'm more used to seeing people pick out hamsters or gerbils when they want a tiny pet, so I was always pretty jazzed when I saw a mouse go home to a nice person. This was when she let me know that she was getting the mouse as a gift for her friend. So I'm just going through the motions, getting the mouse boxed, and reply, that's pretty cool. She must really like mice. Does she have many? Oh no, she doesn't have any. This is going to be a surprise. Oh well, does she have a cage or empty aquarium from another pet? Nah, that's why I'm getting her this too. At which point she holds up the plastic runaround ball she'd picked out. I had to gently inform her that the mouse couldn't live in the ball, that it would need a cage in order to live a happy and healthy life. She really thought the ball would be totally fine as the home for little guy. After talking through the logistics and cost of getting a starter kit, which was tallying higher than she was hoping to spend, I ultimately talked her out of the mouse. I gently suggested a bed of fish, and she was very excited when she saw them all. I got her a small 1-gallon tank that came with a filter, food, some gravel, and a small light, all included for a much more affordable price, and she chose a fish that was her friend's favorite color. Story 25. I was on the Peak Tram in Hong Kong, and a group of U.S. students were riding with us. They asked me and my friends where we were from cause of our accents. We said South Africa. They said, where's that? My guys, it's one of the only countries in the world where the directions are baked into the name. How do you not know what South or Africa mean? I'm not often rendered speechless, but that is one of those occasions. Story 26. That I can't have a conversation with you or take your requests whilst I'm in the middle of a song on stage. Seriously, I have speakers all around me. They are loud. I am concentrating on my performance and making a connection with people in the room. I can't understand anything you are screeching at me, and no, yelling it louder is not the solution. If you have a request for the musician, wait until the set break, then ask them. Also, ask for one song. If they don't know it, you can ask for a different one. But if they don't know that either, then just thank them for their time. We're not jukeboxes. And if you don't like what we're playing, keep it to yourself. You chose to come to our gig. We didn't come to your living room. Story 27. That the answer to the job knowledge quiz was literally in the material they give you with the quiz. The whole team on days we have to re-up our quizzes asks, corkscrew fork, what's the answer to this one? And when I show them where to find it, they get mad and go ask someone else. Honorable mention to having to explain repeatedly how to round up down a number when we're doing inventory and the system won't take the decimal. I can at least tell myself that they probably haven't thought about math since they left school. Story 28. When I was in the military, we had a new airman who I had to counsel on why it is important to shower, wear deodorant, wash your clothes, etc. We didn't work in the field or on the flight line where it may have been more acceptable to be stinky. We worked in the medical group in patient care, and patients were complaining about his foul odor. Backstory: apparently, his mother took care of his laundry his whole life and would remind him to bathe. And since he was on his own now, he just hadn't really thought about it. Story 29. One lovely day, I commented to the ex aloud how the clouds looked as they flowed up and down through the contours of a river valley as they floated by. She was mind blown. And when she told me what was astonishing to her, so was I. She thought clouds didn't move, as in they were fixed in place. She was in her 40s at that point. I had nothing to say to her about that. Story 30. When using yogurt to fight a yeast infection, the yogurt goes in your mouth. You eat it. You do not insert it elsewhere, and you certainly don't ask your coworkers to monitor your hindquarters or office chairs for leaks or squishiness while on shift. At a bank, as a manager. Edit. Inside or out, whatever end, strawberry Go-Gurt will only make the situation worse. We were told at morning staff meeting about the issue, asked to watch her back by checking chairs for moisture with the back of our hands, and shown the empty tube, which was strawberry. None of these things are good. Story 31. If we inverted the polarity of the shop's air intake fan to be an exhaust fan, that we would not all suffocate. Seriously, I worked in a very large aerospace machine shop. For 8 years, I requested the air intake fan be reversed. Nothing happened, no acknowledgement of the request. For 8 years, I worked in a warehouse full of burnt metal smoke, evaporated coolant, adhesive vapors, etc. The air intake sock was at the highest point in the warehouse. It mixed fresh, cooler air with the hot, gross fumes, causing the whole shop to be smog-filled. The highest level manager was convinced an exhaust fan would extract all oxygen, leaving us literally in a vacuum. He never expressed to us until an engineer on his last day would not drop the topic, and the reasoning slipped out. By the end of that day, fumes were exhausted. We all died, obviously, per s. I did not do the explaining, but I did overhear the debate. Permission was not given. The plant manager left early. Friday norm. Polarity was changed. The engineer never came back. The manager took weeks to notice what had happened, regardless of the staff constantly dropping dead from having some clean air. Per s. Story 32. I had a coworker have a hoarse voice, and I asked her if she was okay, and she said she had bronchitis. When I asked her if she had been prescribed antibiotics, she told me that she would probably just ask our doctor at work for some, but that she still had some left over from last time that she was going to use. That's when I had to explain to her how antibiotics work and that you have to finish the whole dose or risk your infection becoming antibiotic resistant. She is 50 years old and works in a medical setting. Story 33. I have a coworker that seems to be dead set against any renewable energy. I was talking to him one day about solar farms and how we need to invest more into maximizing the efficiency of the panels. His response? What happens to the Earth when we suck up all the sun's rays? It took a good 30 minutes of explaining how the sun works and that the interior of the Earth is in no way heated by the sun. Dude is like in his late 60s and is a retired Air Force pilot and also retired from Lockheed as a mechanical engineer.